Okay, you've clicked on that title, you've come here for that reason. It's not a fake out. Let's talk about this film again. Yeah, now when I say again, this is my second viewing of The Batman. I watched it when it initially came out. And obviously I've watched it again because it's now available on streaming. Did I want to watch it? Not really, but my wife was intrigued by it. She wanted to watch it, so I thought, let's sit down, let's give this another go. So I endured this 3 hours yet again. Now, I know this is an unpopular opinion on this film, and my title is somewhat harsh in that hate is a very strong word, and now I suppose hate is... hate is good. I was going to say, I could have said dislike, still dislike, but hate and love are two emotions that are very much interconnected. You don't have hate without having love. Yeah, so I love Batman. I do. I love Batman. I love some of the stuff that's come before. I love the comics. I've read the comics for, on and off for years and years, 30 odd years. So I love Batman. So hate is an apt word for this because, like I said, if I didn't care, it'd be a very nonchalant kind of an emotional response to it. So yeah, hate. Hate is a good strong word, but you got to remember, like I said, hate and love are two things combined. Generally, when you split up in a relationship, in a bad breakup, you generally hate that person. You come to hate them, but the only reason you hate them is because you love them. That's right. Only when that feeling of love dissipates and there is no more feeling of that hate dissipates, and it's a kind of, you feel nothing. You feel a nonchalant kind of whatever, and that's how these things go. So yeah, so why do I hate this Batman film then? Now, like I said, before I am going to get it on 4K. I am going to get it, and I know that's a bit of a contradiction, but I've collected comic book movies, I've collected comics for a long, long time. I have every single comic book movie pretty much ever made, and that's what I do. That's one of my go-to genres. Hate it or love it, I get them all, and I do revisit them from time to time, and no doubt I will revisit this film again, but it ain't going to be for a very, very, very long time, I can tell you that much. So let's explore the reasons as to what happened on this second viewing. So like I said, I have reviewed this film before. It wasn't a very positive review whatsoever, but there are other bits that I disliked it even more, hated it even more on this second viewing. So like I said, the film it does start strong. I'm not going to deny that. I'm just getting a little bit closer to the camera, getting in there, getting a bit, let's get closer. The film started strong, and no denying that. The whole opening sequence with Gotham in the rain, I thought that was fantastic. And when these like low-level criminals are doing stuff like the robbery in the shop, the attacking of that geezer who's got off the train, this sort of a thing, the graffitiing, and when that bat signal goes on, these people are scared. They're scared of the shadows. They're scared of the Batman potentially being in the shadows. They are afraid of the darkness, and this is what Batman has instilled in them by being there for a couple of years doing what he's doing. And that was fantastic. That was like, wow, this Batman doesn't even need to be there, and these criminals are getting on edge because they know that he's out there, but they don't know where he is. And obviously, like he says, he can't be everywhere, and that's right. So he uses that to his disadvantage. Only the film then goes to contradict this later on. The film shows him in the open, shows him out and about doing stuff, right? And this is where a lot of the problem lies for me in this film. Now, I'm not knocking the film making itself. The film looks stunning from beginning to end. It does. It's a well-crafted, well-made film, technically speaking. However, you've set this film in a world, a very sort of realistic, violent kind of world. A sort of like maybe Hell's Kitchen kind of New York setting, but for a city where crime is rampant. You know, no one's good really. Everyone's on the payroll, on the take, this sort of a thing, right? But what you've done is you've taken away all sense of the fantastical. Yeah, every Batman before this has had a sense of fantastical about it, the fantastical. Even the Nolan trilogy. Nolan trilogy stepped into a more sort of real grounded world for Batman, but there was still a fantastical element about it. In you know, the vehicle that he had, in the you know, his outfit, how his outfit came to be, the Batcave itself, all this stuff. There was a fantastical element, and the way that he moved and flew through the air and things like this. There was that element to it. Now, what this film has done is it's ejected all of that fantastical stuff to it, right? So I'm watching this film and I'm thinking, you know, when you get to the points of Batman walking through where all the police officers are into the crime scene, I'm thinking, you look ridiculous. You know, this film, ejecting the fantastical, highlights how ridiculous a man in a bat outfit would actually be, right? Hence why you do have, you know, and I thought it was quite apt that the criminals that they're on the train, they started laughing at him when he stepped out of the shadows. They didn't come across as though they were scared, they laughed, right? And I thought that's very apt. Not only that, this geezer Batman, he's meant to be there skulking around in the shadows, all silent like, and this sort of a thing. Have you heard his footsteps in this film? You hear his footsteps before you see him. He's announcing himself with bang, 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 bang. And I'm thinking, you know, come on now, that's just ridiculous. And I know I'm picking here, and I know I'm digging, and I did, but these are the bits that started standing out to me. This sort of ridiculous stupidness that was done in this film. Now, I know that a lot of people love this film, and good luck to them. I've got no issue with that. I'm not here to provoke or create a fight or trolling or anything like that. Nowadays, if you have a different opinion, you're a troll. That's not what a troll is, right? People need to start using these terms properly. Now, the Batmobile, I've heard people say, oh, the Batmobile scene in this is fantastic. No, it's a car chase. It's a car chase, right? There's been better car chases in films. But let's dig into the psychology as to why you, as a viewer, think that this scene is fantastic. I'll tell you why, because there's nothing else around it. There's nothing else. There's no other action set piece around this, right? All right, Batman gets into a few fist fights, which are not particularly great, this sort of a thing. And then you've got this car chase with the Batmobile, and you're thinking, oh, yes, a bit of excitement. Here we go. So it propels that scene above everything else around it. And you're thinking as a viewer, oh, I love that. That was really good, because there's nothing else to compare it to within the context of this movie. The whole film is ludicrous. Like I said, the Batman being out in the open, the Batman, you know, Batman should be entering these crime scenes after the fact. Yeah, he shouldn't be in there with the police and all this sort of stuff. He should be in there after they've done their investigation. He then breaks in and finds something more, like he does at the end of the film. That's how it should have been, like the animated series. The animated series got it right. This has got it wrong. This is not Batman. This is not the best interpretation of Batman. Bruce Wayne is nowhere to be seen, right? And even when he is, it's few and far between. It is Batman all the way through doing nothing. That's essentially what it is. Now, the Riddler, you've taken, like I said, the fantastical element, and you've turned it, you've twisted it on its head and make it realistic. Too realistic. So much so that the Riddler isn't even the Riddler. This is so far removed from anything comic book that it's gone another way. And what you've done is you're conditioning audiences into this darkness. Batman must be dark, right? You've got to remember, Batman wasn't the Dark Knight until Frank Miller came along in the 80s and created him as the Dark Knight. And I know that was some time ago. I know that was about 40 years ago. And that's a long space of time. But for me, it's not really. It doesn't feel that long ago. You know, but it's a comic book character. It's a comic book character, yeah? Embrace the ludicrousness of the comic. Embrace that. You don't need to turn it dark and like Seven or whatever sort of other films this film feels like, right? That sort of realistic tone. The problem is, like I said, you've conditioned audiences to want Batman to be dark. What are you going to do, right, if this is a trilogy, if this Matt Reeves trilogy ends, right, this is the question I've got for you, where are you going to go next? What do you want next? What are you going to... Are you going to accept Batman now being stepped back to a lighter tone after this trilogy of films, potential trilogy of films, however you want it to be? Are you going to accept Batman stepping back to his comic book roots and embracing that ludicrousness? Or are you going to kick off about it? Because Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, people didn't like them because they harked back to the 60s Batman TV series. That's what they started to go back to, right? But you'd already had the 2 Tim Burton films at this point, which had taken him to a darker level. People wanted that darkness again, so they didn't embrace that sort of campist tone to it, right? But had those 2 films, Forever and Batman and Robin, came before Batman and Batman Returns, what would have happened then? It would have been a different story, because no cinema viewer would have seen Batman before as a darker take character. They'd have probably watched them films and they'd have been somewhat lauded over a bit more than what they were. However, we got what we got. So my point is how do you go back from this? How do you step back into a lighter tone after this film, or after this potential trilogy of films that we're getting now? Not only that, this film is too long. It's 3 hours long, half hour too long completely, right? That whole end sequence, right, not needed. Yeah, not required. You know, what would have worked better in the context story of this film is that you've got the scene where Batman, which I'll come back to this as well because I've got issues here, when Batman has caught the Riddler. He's facing him in Arkham, and then the Riddler tells him his plan of these trucks that have got bombs in, and all the bombs go off and the city gets flooded. Batman's helpless. He can't do nothing, right? He's force of nature at this point. You've got water coming in from the sea, right? And this water goes on to kill loads of people, right? And you're left with Gotham, a lot of Gotham flooded underwater with a huge death toll caused by the Riddler, and Batman is helpless. There's nothing he can do. That there would have been a much stronger ending for this film, that the Riddler had actually won, even though Batman had caught him. That would have been the icing on the cake. That would have elevated the film for me somewhat more than what it was, and put it into a more interesting prospect for future films. But however, we went on to get this Hollywood action sequence that the film felt it needed to put in, where Batman's fighting Riddler cosplayers. That's essentially what he's fighting, cosplayers, for Christ's sake. Yeah, little nerds that are on their computers, who have followed him online. Yeah, and you know, these easily manipulated, weak-minded individuals that have done what they've, you know, followed him and taken up his cause for him. And Batman's fighting cosplayers and has trouble with it, you know, stupidness. But yeah, that scene where Batman's in opposite Arkham Asylum against the Riddler, and he's like, you know my identity, and Batman's there like looking out the corner of his eyes, like sheepish, like, oh, please don't give away my identity, sort of look on his face. Please, that was stupidness. I mean, the look on his face, you just want to slap him, for Christ's sake. Like I said, this film it doesn't work for me at all. It's boring. It's a boring film with not a lot happening. But people are like, oh yeah, I love Batman. He's back to his detective roots. Detect properly. Behind the scenes. In the shadows. Without anyone knowing. You go and knock on a club door. Dressed as Batman. How ludicrous. You enter the club. Yeah? You could, you know, if everyone had come at him at once and piled him, what would he have done? Nothing. Nothing. The heavy footsteps. Bang, 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 bang. Stupid. This film winds me up. It winds me up. Batman's been around. Batman, the problem is that since the 80s, Batman hasn't been given a break. He hasn't been given a break. It's constant. DC, Warner Brothers, they know that Batman's their cash cow. We're going to keep milking this. And the problem is that not one Batman film has ended, and then you've got another Batman going along. Ben Affleck, he should have got his solo Batman film. All right? He should have. End of story. Right? But now you have DC Warner Brothers don't care about creating a new Batman film when another Batman is in effect. Yeah, you're bringing back. You ain't finished with Affleck yet because he's in the Flash. Keaton's coming back. He's a better Batman than this one. Gotham, the TV series. Dark Knight trilogy, it feels like it was only a couple of minutes ago, finished. Batman's never been gone from TV, from film, for the past few decades. He needs a break. He needs to stop. I don't know. I'm venting here. I'm venting about this film. 6 hours I've spent. 6 hours watching this film now. Quarter of a day. Watching the Batman. Another thing, I'll tell you now, right, I collect a lot of stuff. Yeah. Batman there. Catwoman up there. Right. I collect a lot of things like this. You know, as you can see, Joker poster behind me. I bought no merchandise for this film. I haven't bought a t-shirt for it. I haven't bought a figure. It's just, it's a well-made film. Can't knock that. Yeah. Production values are great. But the film itself is, they've missed the point. People are going to say, no, you've missed the point. You don't understand it. No, I do understand it. But what you got to understand is that I see things differently than what you do. Yeah. I don't get caught up with the narrative of what other people think of something. I'll form my own opinion. Right? I'm not a person who has to enter into a group and so the whole group will say, oh, this was a fantastic film, and then I'll say, oh, I feel like I've got to say that as well now. Yeah, no, it was pretty good. No. I'll turn around and say, no, it was rubbish. It was rubbish. It was a rubbish film. These are my reasons why it was a rubbish film. The fantastical's gone. Batman needs the fantastical. It needs that element. Strip it of it, and what have you got? You've got a ludicrous person walking around in a ludicrous suit in a real world scenario. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Film contradicts itself with what it wants from the character. Shadows scare people. Well, now I'm out in a club. I'm walking through a club. I'm walking through crime scenes. People can see me. People know that I'm just a man in a stupid suit. Nolan got it right in the first Batman film. With what he'd done with the Scarecrow. And the fear toxin being released and people seeing Batman and perceiving Batman as a mystical monster. And that's where the element of scare came from in the context of that film. Because rumours would now persist throughout Gotham that we saw the Batman and he was a creature of the night. That worked. This film doesn't work. Hate this film. But I love Batman. So hit that subscribe button. Leave me a comment on your thoughts about my thoughts. Yeah? Let's do it. Let's talk about this. So now it's time to go and wash that bad taste out of my mouth. I'll see you on the next one. Take care all. Goodbye.